So as a games reviewer slash content creator, my current audience is fairly small. I mean, 3,100 subscribers and an average of 500 or so views per video may seem like a lot to me, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that many. So when I send out emails to developers asking for review keys for upcoming games, more often than not, I just get completely ghosted, which is totally understandable. But one thing I have found kind of interesting is that when I have a video do abnormally well, like say my review on Haste, then I start receiving emails from developers asking me to cover their games. Now, I don't want you to get the wrong idea here. It's not like I'm being asked to cover the next big AAA game or even an indie game from a well-established indie studio. These are more like games made by single developers or very, very small teams. They're people just trying to get their game out there and stand out amongst the ocean of games that is so easy to get lost in. So I thought, why not let them shoot their shot? So today we'll be looking at 5 games that developers have emailed me asking me to play. I received these emails over the past month or so, and I kind of just have no idea what I'm going to be getting into here, so let's jump into it. Okay, so we're going to be starting off with Stuntboost, which was easily the best of the games that I played throughout this video. This game is a little different from the others in that I received a key to be able to play this game before it becomes publicly available. The demo will be available to everybody as of July 22nd on Steam. Stuntboost is a momentum-based skateboarding or fingerboarding game, I guess. The best way to describe it is a mix between Haste and Trackmania. And considering I really like both of those games, it's no surprise that I really like this. It gives me a good mid-2000s vibe kind of game. The objective is simple, you need to get from the start of the track to the finish as quick as possible. The momentum physics are very well done, the controls are pretty decent. The soundtrack also has a very kind of mid-2000s rock racing game soundtrack vibe that I really liked. The presentation is slick, it has a good style, the tracks are very well built and they're challenging. Most of them feature a shortcut as well as a hidden collectible to find, which makes replayability on them pretty fun. The game is doing a lot right, but it has also been broken. So this game features a leaderboard system similar to Trackmania where you can watch other people's replays. The system itself works pretty great, and what I like is that if you haven't found the shortcut in a particular level, then the game won't let you view other people's runs that use that shortcut until you find it for yourself. But what you'll quickly realize is that the people who are at the top of the leaderboard, well, they've actually already broken the physics in the game. So for context, here is the 12th level in the demo. It took me close to 20 seconds to beat. Doing this mostly the intentional way, which gets me a diamond time. Each track has medals depending on how quick you beat it up to diamond, and a hidden obsidian time, which I guess is probably meant to be the dev time. I think I did okay, but now let's watch the #1 ranked person on the leaderboard do this track. Like almost immediately, like what the hell, man? Like, yeah, okay, sure. Now, I don't really care that much about the game physics being kind of broken like this, but in the email I received asking me to cover this game, there is mention of a competition that involves real prize money. So when the demo goes live on July 22nd, the developers will also reveal a new quote-unquote tower track, which is supposed to be incredibly difficult, but there will also be a prize for the 5 people able to get the quickest time after 5 days. And this is a decent marketing tactic to get people engaged with your game pretty quickly. Like, it's very reminiscent of what the guys behind Get to Work did when they released their game, and actually they are also doing a hard tower map in their game like right now with a cash prize. But the problem, I guess, comes with how are the devs going to moderate submissions, and where is the line when it comes to how broken the players can make the physics in this game. Now, I doubt I will seriously try and compete for the prize because I'm just, I'm not that good and don't really have the time to spend hours upon hours grinding, trying to compete on something like this, but I'll definitely give the map a go when it launches because I have been having an absolute blast with the game and kind of just want the chance to play a little bit more of it, even if it is probably just going to be a rage map. But I highly recommend checking the demo out regardless of the competition stuff. I think this is absolutely fantastic. So let's move on to the next game. Yasuke, The Lost Descendant. The developer of this game actually sent me 2 emails, so I guess they definitely really wanted me to try it. Why they wanted me to try a version of the game that is in pre-alpha so bad, I don't really know. So this game is apparently inspired by Devil May Cry and Hi-Fi Rush, which I can see some of the inspiration for Devil May Cry, I guess. This is kind of the polar opposite on the spectrum to the last game we looked at. because this was the most unfinished and probably my least liked of the 5 games that I played. Most of that just comes from the fact that this game is just kind of way too early. Every aspect of this game has problems. The demo for this game is in a small sandbox style map that lets you run around and pretty much just kind of test the mechanics of the game. This feels more like an early dev test space more than it actually feels like it resembles a game. I will say though, I did like the general look of the game, although there are some severe lighting issues in some points of the map. The game's movement system is very parkour inspired, and to be fair, I do like the animations, and the general traversal is okay right up until the point you become airborne. And then everything just kind of goes out the window. Jumping on like things is a bit too sticky and the controls aren't really that intuitive, but the camera in this game is so awful. It flies around the spot. It's so janky. It hurt my eyes to look at. The sound settings in this game don't work correctly, which is always a personal pet peeve of mine. Sound balancing is one of the first things I do when I go into any game because it's never the way that I like it by default. But it's worse when they just kind of straight up don't really work. Kind of works in the game sometimes, but the menu sounds and the music never go down, and sometimes it'll jump back up whenever you click off the menu. It's a mess. And speaking of a mess, and the menus in general are just also not doing it for me, which are also just kind of all over the place when it comes to style and kind of readability. This is kind of the least of the game's problems because it's pre-alpha, and fixing this should be towards the end of the game's priorities when it comes to working through development. Because yeah, the top priority needs to be the combat, which is probably the game's shining light. I mean, I probably wouldn't call it shining, but it's the one thing that this game may have going for it. The animations and the feel of combos in combat feels decent. The enemy AI pretty much is non-existent, but the look and feel of combat is okay, even if the AI are more or less just glorified test dummies. Again, I think controls need to be mapped to feel more intuitive from the get-go, and some tooltips or, UI prompts to tell the player when special moves are ready to go, like popping up on screen, would go a long way into helping players with onboarding with the combat system, because right now it is just sifting through the really rough menus to try and work everything out or just button mash until things happen. The 3 different combat styles are defined and unique somewhat, but right now there isn't really any reason to use one over the other. You just kind of use the one you like, I guess. But again, this just feels more like a dev test area than a game. So yeah, I haven't really played many games that have been in a pre-alpha state. This certainly feels like something that is a long ways away from being a completed game. That being said, I can kind of see what the developers are going for. So my advice to them, if they ever watch this video, is to, go back and play some of the games that Yasuke is inspired by. Devil May Cry, Hi-Fi Rush, or, kind of any other game in a similar vein. No Straight Roads, I guess. Universally or very well liked games in the same genre, and figure out what parts of those games' combat is what makes them so good. Is it the feel of the hit? Is it the combos? Is it the power fantasy? The tactics? And then do the same for the parkour segments. Find the game with the best parkour platforming, or the one that you like the best, and ask yourself, why does this feel so good? Is it the way the controls work? Is it the physics? Is it the camera movement? Does it feel free flowing? What are all of the elements that go into making it one of the best? And then take those learnings and implement them into your own game. Or you can do the inverse. You can look at the worst games in the genre and say to yourself, hey, this is a pitfall these developers fell into making their game. Let's not do that. Or, what are these elements that I don't like about this game? How do we make sure we don't do that? When I really started to get into editing on YouTube, this is kind of something that I did. One of the first things I learned is why people don't use all of those cool looking preset transitions between every scene all of the time. It's because I watched a video that had about 10 or so views that did that, and it looked absolutely horrendous. And so now I know, I don't want to do that. This alpha demo is not something that I recommend anyone should play in its current state, and I do think it can be kind of dangerous to a game's reputation to allow the public to play this game in its current state. This is kind of what testers are for. I know, as an indie dev, there probably isn't a budget for testers, but even if you can get 10 people from a Discord that can be brutally honest with your game, you will get more valuable feedback from that rather than the hundreds or maybe even thousands of people spamming your Steam discussion forums. You know, negative word of mouth is a thing, and I think it's better to have your first public impressions of the game be closer to what your final product is going to be, so people don't get misconceptions. So moving on to the next game, we have Coal LLC, which is probably the least aesthetically pleasing looking game of the bunch. It's a mining roguelike. The objective of this game is to mine coal. You have a timed deadline to hit a quota, and if you can't hit that quota, the game ends. Like many roguelikes, there are upgrades that help you mine faster, hiring workers that can help you mine rocks, and skill upgrades that either give you extra time per day or increase inventory slots and stuff like that. It's a very simple game that does a pretty good job of executing on its gameplay premise, which is good because that's pretty much all the game has going for it. It has a pretty addicting gameplay loop, and I found the base gameplay to just be very fun. Working out the best practices to optimize my coal mining is fun, although I do think that maybe the difficulty scaling is a bit out of whack. The time constraints feel extremely tight, and the scaling of coal needed from day to day does feel like it rises too fast. But that's kind of a balancing issue that I'm sure that could be fixed before the game releases. As it stands though, there is a solid foundation for a game here that I'm sure people will love if they give it a shot. For me personally, it does feel like the pacing of the days is just a little too quick for my liking, even with the extra time add-on upgrade that you can get. But that could just be a me thing. You know, I thought that maybe if the rounds went longer, and even if the, coal deadlines were a bit harsher from the start, but the time was also longer and just kind of give you more time, give it a go. Because yeah, the days do feel quick, and then the reset happens and then it's like straight on to the next. Again, it could just be a me thing. Some work on making the menus and UI a little more appealing could definitely be appreciated, but I do have high hopes for this game, and I think it's going to be good whenever it comes out. The next game we have is called Shepherd Knight. This is an adventure puzzle game where you herd sheep. As a game, it has some potential, but the demo I played was just extremely dry. The first 5 minutes or so of the game, the most mind-numbing gameplay I've played in a game for a while. It was just walking behind sheep. The demo does gradually add more game mechanics and more elements to the game that make it more than just herding sheep, but the overall experience never felt more than just a little bit boring. And I think a lot of that comes from the game. It just doesn't have that much of an atmosphere. Like during the times when you're herding sheep, the only sounds you can hear are the sheep and your footsteps, and it gets old very quick. There is a point in the demo where you ride your sheep for the first time and the music kicks in and the game feels like it woke up and is alive for a moment, before the track ends and it loses that sense of wonder it had before. Another major problem I have with this game is the combat. It's basic and it needs more depth. Left click is attack and right click is block, and that's mostly it, and it's not enough. I hope there are more plans than what is here in the demo, because if what's in this demo is all I'm going to be doing in the full release, then I can't say that I really want to play it. But I will say though, there is some potential with Shepherd Knight. I think the art style is good. I liked the story cutscene at the start. I think it was well narrated. I think that there is potential, if this narration appears more in the game, that I could be eventually invested in the story. I think the puzzles are okay, but the controls of herding the sheep are a little, not bad, but I would call frustratingly tedious. While the controls of picking up sheep and throwing them are just kind of a little too rigid and kind of lame. Yeah, look, the game is extremely dry, but it does show signs that there is something here worth playing. It just needs a lot more work, especially when it comes to atmosphere. Some more music, or at the very least some more background sounds to make the areas feel a little bit more lively and less empty would go a long way. Or just some more things to look at, surroundings to take in while you're doing this mundane task. It could go a long way. The last game we have to look at today is a little game called Awrak. It's Balatro. It's a fantasy slime killing Balatro game. And it's good. Instead of trying to hit a score within a turn limit, it's trying to kill a bunch of enemies within a turn limit. I can try to explain this game further, but I would just be explaining to you how Balatro works, which I can't really be bothered doing. If you play Balatro, you know how this all works. If you haven't played Balatro, then go play Balatro. It's an amazing game. And then you can also try this game because it's also good. The main difference between Awrak and Balatro is the presentation of combat. Your cards are your abilities that do different things and take a certain amount of energy to use. These cards can be upgraded to have different effects and have the ability to proc passives if certain conditions met via character passives or abilities used. From the looks of it, there is a lot of versatility to how you can build out your runs, although I found the ability cards were a little limited. You know, there wasn't enough variety to them. But because this is a demo, there may be a lot more in the full game. I'm not sure yet. When you play your turn, combat is shown to us by our character actually using the abilities, and you get to see everything that happens, which I like. But unlike Balatro, it can be kind of hard to gauge just how much damage your character is really going to do. You know, it's probably something that you could probably figure out a bit more with more game time put into it, but this is a good demo and I did put this game on my wish list after playing it. If I had to point out some negatives, I think the music doesn't really suit the game that much. I think visually the animations of the characters is a little stiff, but on the other hand, I do like the animations of all the spells and attacks and effects, so I don't think it's, you know, that much of a problem. And yeah, I think the UI is a little plain. I think it could use a bit of a spruce up, but it does do its job, and so I'm not going to complain too much about that. Look, overall, I think this game has potential, even if its premise is a little derivative. You know, I feel like it stands on its own just enough that people who like Balatro will find enough there to make it feel like it's a different experience. It doesn't feel like it has the depth or complexity that Balatro does yet. You know, keep in mind this is only a demo, but in its current state, it's promising. Okay, so that is all I have for today. Honestly, these games were a lot better than I thought they were going to be. Maybe I should take some of these emails more seriously when I get them. So before we go, I would like to thank the developers for reaching out. You know, it can be pretty hard to put yourself out there, and when you do something like this, there is a fair chance that you may not get the feedback that you wanted. But props to them for taking that chance, and if any of the games you saw today interested you, then I will leave a link to all 5 of the games I covered today in the description below. You know, play the demos for yourself and see what you think. If I had to rank them on how much I enjoyed them from most to least, it would be Stuntboost first, Awrak, then Cole LLC, then Shepherd Knight, and then lastly it'd be Yasuke. That's all for today, so thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, then please leave it a like and consider subscribing if you're new. If you want to see me do another video like this again in the future, then, you know, let me know. I'd be open to doing something like this again. I thought it was actually a lot of fun. Many thanks to my YouTube members, Controlled Killer, Yellow, Melodia, and Jingles. Absolute legends, and if you think my content is worth supporting financially, you can do that via a YouTube membership. Perks are on the screen. I also have a free winter Discord as well as a Steam curator page, and if you want to join any of those, links are also in the description below. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you all next time.